Hey everybody, welcome to the Sky Lounge, and this is Piggyskin Picks, where I pick the winners and losers of the upcoming NFL week. Boys and girls, week 1 we ended on the pick'ems with 13 out of 16 correct. Hooray! Except for the fact that, yeah, it is 81.25%, but the Cardinals-Lions game just kind of fucked me over. Thanks for the tie, assholes, but hey, moving on to week number 2, and it starts with Thursday Night Football, boys and girls. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to go ahead and select the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Reason why is I think both quarterbacks are going to throw an absolute shit show. I don't think it's going to be any good, relatively speaking. And somehow, some way, Bruce Arians will finesse his way into a win, because that's just what he does. We've seen him do that a lot in Arizona, and I definitely think he could do that with Jameis Winston. Whereas, yeah, Carolina, I don't really have a lot of positive things to say, especially after last week. I think, people say the Rams, but I think this is a much weaker Rams team than last season, and I think they have taken a step or two back. And Carolina just couldn't match up at home, and I think they might play a little bit more arrogantly to a division rival, and I could definitely see Tampa Bay with an upset here. Now, moving on to Sunday morning games, Indianapolis Colts versus Tennessee Titans. I'm going to go ahead and select Tennessee. And I'm going to go out and say this. I think domination by Tennessee, especially what we've seen last week, they're not completely dead, everybody. Tennessee still has a fucking team. Marcus Mariota looked pretty impressive last week. Defense looks stellar. Whereas the Colts, I think they will put up a decent fight. Frank Reich is a fucking genius. Really, he really is. And so he might pull off some shit, but I think ultimately you're going to have a Tennessee Titans team pull away probably the third or fourth quarter like they did in the Browns game, and I definitely see the Indianapolis Colts being a losing team throughout the season, but they're going to be a fun team to watch, because Frank Reich, like, the way he just goes for it, it's incredible. And the way that squad has worked, especially with last week's game against the Chargers, I thought the Colts were immensely impressive despite their loss. And yeah, Titans will probably be the favorites here, right? Easily. Now let's move on to the next game. The Chargers, speaking of, the LA Chargers versus the Detroit Lions. I'm going to go ahead and select the Lions. Yeah, the Chargers got weaker. With injuries to Hunter Henry, is that right? Through this news that came out today. I think really the Chargers offense has gotten a little bit weaker. I think their defense showed last week how much they can actually choke. So I see Detroit stepping on their throats at home, and come on, man, it's Detroit at home. Defense has to get a little better at home. Right, Lions? Right? Hopefully it does. Now, moving on to the next game. The Buffalo Bills versus the New York Giants. Boys and girls, I think the Buffalo Bills are going to come out with a very surprising win. And the reason why I say it is because of this. Their defense is spectacular. They could hold off teams for a long, long time. Ask the New York Jets how they blew a 16-0 lead. And something about Josh Allen can click in this game, I feel. And the Giants, with virtually not a lot of positives to take away from last week's game against the Dallas Cowboys, the Giants are just going to look to be respectable in terms of numbers. How many, balls does Eli throw? How many reps does Daniel Jones get in the third or fourth quarter? Whatever shit that, the fucking family of the owner of the Giants, whatever they need to fucking go to sleep, they'll just sprinkle that shit on there. So I see Buffalo with the win here, boys and girls. Now, the next game, Arizona Cardinals versus the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Baltimore Ravens will win this game. I'd say easily, but not to the extent of how they beat the Miami Dolphins last week. I mean, that game was absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, Lamar Jackson looks great. He does. But don't get it twisted. Miami is an absolute shit show of a team, and Lamar, I think, is going to be tested in this game because despite the fact that they're a division rival, the Arizona Cardinals have a pretty serviceable and decent defense that can really test a fucking player or two. And so I think it's going to be a closer game than the fuck. It was like minus 18 the last time I checked, boys and girls. But if I double check here, it's actually minus 13.5. Misremembered the wrong game there. But minus 13.5. I still would think, Arizona, closes in on that gap, probably covers at plus 13.5. Shouldn't be a problem for them. But the Ravens will still win. And at home, a defense will show up. I mean, kudos to Earl Thomas, doing fantastic for that team already. And if we move on to the next game, which is the minus 18 that we just talked about, it's the New England Patriots versus the Miami Dolphins. Holy shit. Yeah, the college team, Miami Dolphins, will be facing a NFL team in the New England Patriots. Now, let's throw this caveat out there. I don't think the Patriots are going to cover the minus 18. I think by the fucking skin of their pubic hair, somehow the Miami Dolphins will pull the cover on this shit. But lose. But lose in a fucking horrendous way. And you might see a garbage time, touchdown or two, but I think inevitably the Dolphins will realize, my God, we're actually going to lose to Tom Brady at home for the first time in God knows how long. God knows how long. Seriously, they win in Miami. Like, Miami wins in Miami against the Patriots in a disgusting number of ways that you begin to wonder, like, really, Tom Bell, you can't win there? I mean, Robert Kraft is getting hand jobs by the fucking Asian prostitutes down there, but you can't get a fucking win? You can't come on the field? You're just gonna get cummed on? All right, that's gonna be a thing. So Miami still tanks and New England heads to the glory land. I think I just did a Heil Hitler. That's not good. That's not good. So let's move on to the next game. The Dallas Cowboys versus the Washington Redskins. Ladies and gentlemen, behold, the Dallas Cowboys. I think they're good. Good enough on offense. Their defense is spectacular. Special teams is, it's all right. Punter's good. Kicker's actually pretty damn all right, too. But I think Washington will put up a fight. Case Keenum is decent enough, especially last week's outing where I thought, okay, not a bad look for Case Keenum. Looked all right. And Dallas will continue to push on that sexy, beautiful offense that they threw out last week. I mean, it was a spectacular show, especially from Dak Prescott, a perfect quarterback rating, just stud. And so if, Washington can pull off an upset, that'd be crazy, but I don't think it's going to happen. I do think they will keep it relatively close, but Dallas will come out with a win. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Houston Texans. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Texans and only throw this shit out there. I think it's going to be a question of who shits the defense bed first. Right? Who fails on the defense first? Will it be the Jacksonville defense first, or will it be the Houston defense first? Who's going to fail first? And I think in this case, Jacksonville just might do that. Houston, yeah, relatively speaking, you were going against Drew Brees in the last minute of that Monday Night Football game. However, oh boy, Jacksonville's defense just, the arrogance that they play with, it's astounding. To the point where you begin to realize, like, wow, there's a lot of flags that were thrown against Jacksonville, and if they had a player fucking thrown out, was it Jack? Doesn't matter. Miles Jack might be. Doesn't matter, because I think Houston comes out with the win. Surprise, surprise, I'm picking Houston. Yes, boys and girls, yes I am. Let's move on to the next game. The Seattle Seahawks versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going with the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, that's right, with the upset. Homer shit. But to be honest, I think despite the clearly missed opportunities on defense for Seattle's side, I think the offense was fantastic relative to the defense that was put out there by Cincinnati, which underrated, mind you. did all right. I think Seattle did all right. Defense is going to be a little bit suspect, especially with, Ben Roethlisberger trying to throw long balls, forcing the balls there. But I think if Seattle plays up to their game, unleashes DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and, threaten the Pittsburgh defense with the dual head of Chris Carson and Rashad Penny, I think the Steelers will face an upset at home. Now, I will say this, though. That offensive line for the Pittsburgh Steelers is fantastic. I don't know if we're going to get the same goddamn center who was just holding on to that fucking ball. If that happens, I think we can see a nice little win for the Seahawks there. But let's move on to the next game, boys and girls. The San Francisco 49ers versus the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. I kind of butchered the pronunciation there. But the Bengals, I believe, are going to come out with the win against the 49ers. And it's crazy to realize that if you take a look at all these fixtures, there's a lot of really notable, really historic rivalries or matchups like the 49ers and Cincinnati Bengals. They were, twice in the Super Bowl against each other. Now, of course, this isn't the same, 49ers or Cincinnati Bengals, but I think based on how these two level up, match up, I just see a better team in Cincinnati. Defense will do work. I think Andy Dalton to Ross, even without AJ Green, it's incredible what they were able to do. And I believe the 49er secondary just might choke it a little bit in the dying minutes of the game. Or maybe Jimmy Garoppolo chokes. I don't know. Jimmy GQ tends to just fuck up a lot. So, kind of counting on that. So, there you go. Cincinnati with the win on that one. Minnesota Vikings versus Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers easily. Kirk Cousins versus Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. Need I say more? Moving on to the next game. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs versus Oakland Raiders. I'm going to go ahead with the Kansas City Chiefs, but let you people know right now, I think the Oakland Raiders are going to make this a very, very close game. I think the scoreline is going to be extremely respectable relative to what the Oakland Raiders situation is right now. They are without a superstar, guy on their roster. They're just not. I mean, you can argue one or two guys. Maybe. Not really. But what they showed Monday Night Football was they can play as a team. They will do their jobs. And they are behind this John Gruden-led team. And so I really do think the Raiders will keep this close at home. And again, especially because it's the last season in Oakland, because you are doing this for the fans at home, I think there's going to be an emotional, surcharge for the Raiders, and something is going to happen. Something's going to spark. But ultimately, I think the Kansas City Chiefs still bring this home with the win, just because you got Patrick Mahomes, man. You do. Oh, you got Patrick Mahomes. He's fucking awesome. He really is. I'm not even hating on him. So, Chiefs with the win, but Oakland will make it really, really decent. Now, the New Orleans Saints versus the LA Rams. A rematch against two hotly contested NFC Championship rivals. Right? Not really. They just matched up last season. In a very controversial ending to that. But hey, I think the New Orleans Saints win this game in LA. That Saints defense is awful. But I'll tell you what, I think the LA Rams offense is very suspect. I don't think that offense is as good as people are thinking it is. And their defense, as amazing as Aaron Donald is, and as solid as some of those pieces in the secondary are, I think Drew Brees will expose that team on the defensive side. And yes, there wasn't really a lot of running game with the Saints, but I think somehow, some way, Drew Brees, out of his ass with Lutz by his side, pulls out with the win against the Rams. Now, the Chicago Bears versus Denver Broncos. I'm going to go with the Broncos. Crazy, right? But yeah, there you go. I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos. And this is going to be a situation where we ask ourselves, are these two quarterbacks? Oof. But I think Joe Flacco in Denver will do all right. And, you know, the whole thing goes with the altitude thing in Miles High Stadium in Denver, which I have been. Fantastic stadium. And Chicago with Mitchell Trubisky, I don't think they're going to be able to handle it. I don't think they're going to be able to grab a win there. And you could see a potential upset here with the Denver Broncos coming out with a win. Now, boys and girls, the next game is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Atlanta Falcons taking on Sunday Night Football. Ba, 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 ba. And so I think the Philadelphia Eagles win this in Atlanta. Wentz is back. Wentz is back. And as long as you keep him healthy, as long as he's good to go, your offense is great. Deshaun Jackson looked fantastic last week. Defense is questionable, but they'll get their shit together. We've seen them get their shit together. And as for the Falcons, I really don't know what else to say about the Falcons. I think this is a team disguised as... I think this is a fucking sub-500 team disguised as a viable playoff team because of Julio Jones and Matt Ryan. I really don't think that's a great idea evaluating that based on those two. I think Julio Jones is fantastic, but the guy throwing to him and Matt Ryan, I don't think he's all that great. I think he's a bang average quarterback near the levels of Kirk Cousins, and Lord Wentz will show. Do not doubt him. Do not doubt Lord Wentz. He is going to do some dirty business. Now, boys and girls, speaking of dirty business, we got some dirty-ass business in Monday Night Football. The Cleveland Browns versus the New York Jets. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to double down with my Cleveland pick from last week. I know I said the Cleveland Browns are going to finally shake off their fucking winless streak, home opener. But I think this is it. I think this is the game against the Jets where Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns get their shit, put their fucking, balls, tie it up, and teabag the fuck out of the New York Jets defense. My God, Jets. 16-0. You blew a 16-0 lead to lose 17-16. Yeah, I'm just going to remind you right there. That offensive line still looks abysmal. Sam Darnold, as much as I like him, help a guy out, right? And yeah, Cleveland looked awful last week. They did. But I'm not one of those knee-jerk guys with the Cleveland Browns where I think everything within their organization is solid. I think they just had a really bad day at the office last week, and they will bounce back in this game with the win in New York or New Jersey. Technically, it's New Jersey, right? Kids, I don't know my geography, but there you go. That's the picks for this week, week number 2. Boys and girls, follow me at the Sky Lounge and all the links in the description below. Like, comment, subscribe for more daily contents. Now, fuck off.